Pokemon cards right now are bigger than they ever have been. And yeah, that probably should excite you, but honestly, man, honestly, it kind of scares me a little as well, because when something is at its most popular, that's exactly when the whole last full risk is at its highest. So when you're spending thousands of dollars on your collection today, it is so important to be questioning the future of Pokemon cards and what we can all expect within the next 5 years. So that's why in this video, I'll be going over my 5 biggest predictions for Pokemon cards and explaining where I think the future for the hobby is going. I mean, I'm seeing some of the prices that the cards are selling for right now, and I'm just thinking like, okay, wow, that's insane. But then there's kind of another side that I'm thinking like, I don't know, man, this seems to be like waters that we've never explored before. And I think the problem is right now, collectibles are exactly that. We're all in waters right now that none of us have seen before, and we're essentially in this new area, and the future is like, what's going to actually be happening? Like, are prices just gonna continue to rise, or will there be a time when they start coming down in price? So that's why for the first prediction is expect demand to stay for a bit longer than expected. Now, the reason I say this is because the latest reports are showing that Pokemon is producing over 10 billion cards annually. And it has been for the last few years consecutively, which is massive printing numbers, but you also got to remember, they're not actually increasing how many cards are being produced. So it is very clear that the Pokemon company is already operating at an enormous scale. In fact, demand has become so large that even with these record printing numbers, products are still being absorbed by the market. Now, the way I look at it is like this. If Pokemon continues printing roughly at the same level year after year, but the player and collector base continue to grow, those two forces start working against each other. So supply may be increasing slowly and incrementally, but demand is growing exponentially. So you have a bit of a problem here because all the collectibles of today and all the investments that people are buying today, well, they're actually coming for where the production isn't actually meeting that new demand. So it is very hard for a lot of the cards today to just have a sharp decrease, or the sealed product today. One way I'll look at it as well, for example, Ascended Heroes. If Ascended Heroes is difficult to get today, how is it going to be easier in 2 or 3 years? That doesn't make much sense. All the collectibles of today, there's going to be a big question, and I would probably just hold out a little bit rather than expecting some huge market crash to happen just straight away. Now, the next prediction is expect illustration rares to become the plays for the majority of collectors. So there's been a shift that's taken place, and that is the prices of singles have gone up enormously. In fact, so much so that the most desired illustration rares today are selling for what the top chase cards of a set were selling for a few years ago. And I can actually see illustration rares being the plays, and the SIRs are going to be reserved for a bit of a different market and not that much for the mainstream anymore. I've really noticed that most of the top special illustration rares, a lot of collectors are never going to own those. They are just too far out of reach for so many people. And especially when you're looking at graded copies and high PSA 10s or BGS 10s, that becomes a market that a lot of people won't even bother playing in. It's become really rarefied air. But now I can actually see this shift happening, and I'm actually going to be expecting it for the future, that illustration rares are going to be a heavy focus for collectors, and there's going to be a lot of people who start investing in illustration rares and putting a lot of their focus on them, or these smaller chase cards, because these illustration rares used to be the smaller chase card and most people could get all of them, or they weren't that difficult. There would be only very few illustration rares that went to some absurd price points like the Magikarp. So that's changing a lot now. There is a lot of illustration rares. When we look at Pokemon 151 or some of the illustration rares from Destined Rivals, they are going for really high prices. In fact, so much so that I look at some of those prices and I'm like, wow, that's what VMAX alternate arts used to sell for. So I think it's going to be an interesting thing for the future where illustration rares become heavily desired, and they're going to be some of the main plays because the SIRs, and especially the top chase cards, they are becoming out of reach for the mainstream. They're just getting too expensive. And you just have to be realistic as well. When I'm looking at some of these top chase cards, do I want a brand new PS5 Pro where I can play GTA 6, where I can get one of a really good experience with that, or do I want a top chase card? It's a big question right now that people have to that's kind of how people are thinking about it at the moment. Though in saying that, if you are active in the Pokemon market, one of the smartest things you can be doing is keeping track of your collection, and that's where today's sponsor Collector comes in. Collector is a complete collectible portfolio app, and it's really built for the long term. So not only can you organize your collection in one place, but the app also updates prices based on the real-time market, so you can always have a current up-to-date pricing view of your collection. Now, if you love going to card shows, one of their best features is the trade analyzer. Here you can just simply enter the cards or the products that you're offering versus the cards or products that you're going to be receiving, and then Collector will compare the current values and help determine whether the trade is fair based on the current market. Though it goes beyond just price tracking, you can actually utilize its research tools as well. One of the areas I love is set analytics. This lets you go very deep into specific Pokemon sets. For example, here you can clearly see which cards are being wishlisted most by collectors, along with seeing what the market movers of that set are. So if you are serious about tracking your collection, Collector is the obvious option. You can download the Collector by using the link in the description below. A huge thanks to Collector for supporting the channel. Now let's get back into these predictions. Now the next prediction is expect different Pokemon to be desired as the market turns. Right now, the main market driving the insane price premiums is millennials. And the Pokemon that millennials have connections with are the ones that everyone can already guess. They're Generation 1 and early Pokemon. We can see that. All the top chase cards right now, they're either a Mew, a Charizard, a Gengar, a Pikachu. Though I would prepare for different Pokemon to take the spotlight in a few years as the market turns. We know that the hobby is worldwide, but we do know in terms of the high price premiums, it is largely driven by millennials. Though what's going to happen when Gen Z or Gen Alpha and that generation grow up, are there going to be different Pokemon that are desired and take that spotlight? Pikachu, probably that will never get taken away. That is the mascot of the franchise. It's reserved there. So I am wondering though, will there be some Pokemon in the future that collectors actually prefer? Is that going to be Koraidon or Miraidon? Is it going to be Zacian and Zamazenta? As these generations get older, they're probably going to be nostalgic for their generation. I can already see that like Generation 4 is going through a massive nostalgia cycle at the moment. People are loving Gen 4, but of course a lot of those people that, or the kids that grew up with Generation 4, they're entering that adult money. What's going to happen when Generation 6, Generation 7, that's all going to be happening in the few years. And I mean, we know, like, you know, time goes quick now. Like what I was talking with my friend the other day and I was looking at him, I was speaking to him like, man, high school, that was 14 years ago. And he was like, dude, do not say that to me. Like, do not remind me. And I was just thinking, in my mind, I was like, man, that just feels like yesterday. And 14 years have passed since I graduated high school, which to me is just mind boggling. But if you're like a similar age to me, I'm 31, you're probably thinking like, wow, man, like time goes quick. Like it just flies. And the older I'm getting, I'm realizing the years, they're just slipping away. So the same with that, man, with the future generations, that is something that we all need to consider. And also, if you have been loving the video, my name is Phil. I create content around Pokemon cards and Pokemon investing. If you do want to stay up to date with all things Pokemon cards and Pokemon investing, feel free to subscribe to the channel as I love seeing all the new people on board. Now, the next prediction is keep an eye out for other TCGs as they may catch up. Now, there's two ways to look at it. One way is you don't want to just be buying into every other TCG because Pokemon is spiking, so you assume that. But I wouldn't be surprised that there is massive catch-ups in other markets. One market right now, like if you watch my channel, you know I'm a big Dragon Ball collector. I follow the Dragon Ball market a lot. I probably should make more Dragon Ball content. It's just hard because so much is happening with Pokemon, and then all these videos, they take hours and hours to make. Well, from the filming to the editing, and I want to start talking more about the Dragon Ball market because it's going insane. I can see right now, Dragon Ball cards, even if it's close to impossible to get them at retail price now. If you want to get Dragon Ball booster boxes, the latest sets, forget about it. Even a set that's pre-ordered months in advance is already sold out here in Australia. I imagine the rest of the world as well. And we can see One Piece. One Piece has actually been really stable. So I remember people saying One Piece was a trend. I actually, I'm not familiar with One Piece at all. I've never watched the anime. I only played like a game called Jump Ultimate Stars, and that's the only kind of experience I have ever had with One Piece. But I never ever thought of that as a trend because I could see, man, Bandai was taking that super seriously. And now it's established. Like if you invested in One Piece early on and you had that knowledge of it, which I didn't because I wasn't, like, to be honest, it just wasn't a thing that I actually watched One Piece. I never grew up with it. But in saying that, if you were, and you had that foresight, you'd be laughing right now because you can see the prices these are selling for. Like even Yu-Gi-Oh! With Magnificent Monsters coming out, that the English TCG is getting serialized cards. And also you have to remember, when Pokemon cards are getting scalped like this, people are going to other TCGs. But the irony is now, all the other TCGs are getting scalped. So yeah, it's just crazy. I think that shift of what people desire. You got to remember, the generations above us, they love their art collecting, man. There is so much money in the art collecting. But for us, what's our art collecting? We love our collectibles that are linked with an IP that we're familiar with. Why do I love Pokemon? I got so much nostalgia. Why do you love Pokemon? You probably have the same nostalgia. Why do you love Dragon Ball, One Piece, whatever you love collecting? It's because you have that own personal connection with it. And I think we're in a really interesting spot right now in the hobby as a whole, because there is so much exciting things about to come up. And yeah, I personally am really excited to see what happens with other TCGs, but I also would be careful not to just buy every other TCG. For one reason is because of the longevity aspect. The longevity aspect is one that you really want to be careful of, to be honest, because how long will some of these TCGs, will they have the longevity? I think One Piece will. I think Dragon Ball will. It's had a fan base for 40 years. The fan base is so linked with Dragon Ball. It is so connected. Even when Sparking Zero came out, that became one of the biggest phenomenons in 2024. Everyone bought it. Like even people everyone just jumped on Sparking Zero because it still has that fan base. Well, Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of in a weird position because in some ways it has a much older demographic. It's not pulling in the new generation. But Pokemon is in its league of its own. Pokemon's like a way of life for people. That's exactly how I describe it. It's like you've got your favorite Pokemon, you know your favorite games. It's become a core kind of memory for a lot of people and a part of their life. Now, the final prediction is, we can all expect a market correction to eventually happen, but do not hold out for some insane hobby-changing crash that a lot of people are saying. Here's what I actually genuinely believe what's going to happen. I do think there will be a correction, though I think it's going to happen a lot later and a lot at a different time than people expect. Though at the same time, this whole thing that there's going to be an insane market crash and everything's just going to fall like a pin, at this stage, I just don't see that. The reason why that is because Pokemon has a genuine collector base that is still so strong outside of all the hype beasts and trendsetters and sneaker bros that have come in. There is an enormous amount of collectors in this hobby. There are millions of collectors who just do not care about eBay sold listings or prices, and they just genuinely love the hobby. And that is essentially the flaw of the hobby. The whole Pokemon cards are the next Beanie Babies argument is probably the worst argument I've ever heard someone make. Pokemon cards have an established audience that has survived major cycles, and it's not a trend, and it's not something that just people are buying for today. There's a very big genuine collector base that is not going anywhere. So this whole thing that, but all these people, when Pokemon cards aren't hyping and trending anymore, everyone's gonna leave. Well, guess what? Even if all those people left, you're still gonna have a massive audience of collectors, including myself. So that is something you do need to consider as well. And I suppose we could call that a flaw of the hobby, or just a base point in the hobby, because even if, like I said, all those trendsetters leave, you're still gonna have a base. And not only that, all those trendsetters, and I don't even know the word we wanna call them, all the people that have come in because of the hype and the mania, a lot of them are just going to become genuine lifelong fans from this era as well. They're not going to really go anywhere. So it's a really hard ask now to expect a massive crash. Correction for sure, but this whole thing that Pokemon cards are going to become this insane, everything's going to go to zero, and just the things I hear right now, I think if you've been in the hobby long enough, you can see the direction it's gone. You can see the direction it's going. It's become such a strong piece of pop culture, of history. Though with all that said, there is something that's even more important than predicting what's going to come with collectibles, and that is avoiding the common mistakes in this hobby. And the most common mistakes to be avoided can be seen in this video on screen here. In this video that's right now appearing on screen, I go deep into the most common Pokemon investing mistakes to avoid. You're going to really love that video if you enjoyed this one. Really appreciate you watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you on the next video.